I apologize for the rush, but we do have a limited duration. So once you're ready, clerk will call the roll, please.
Mr. Sinapi?
Here.
Mr. DeLuise? Mr. Foley? Mr. Gephardt? Mr. Kirby?
Here.
Mr. Lattiser?
Here.
Mr. Muto?
Here.
Mr. Napa? Mr. Ricks?
Here.
6 present.
All right, will Councilman Muto please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bomb bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
All right, so for those who don't know, this meeting has a hard stop at 7 p.m. We cannot go any further than that. The lay of the land is going to be the school department will be putting forth a presentation, followed by questions from the council people. Should there be any time remaining, we'll then open it up to the public for any questions they may have. As you may notice, we don't have a full council tonight. This was scheduled on very short notice, so please don't take their absence to be any sign that they don't think this is important, because not only do they think so, but several of them even provided questions for to be asked on their behalf. So we can't begrudge people just because they have prior commitments, especially on short notice. And that's why we're also very appreciative for the school department putting this together. So that being said, school department, feel free to take it away. I'm going to go sit over there, given that there's a giant screen above me.
Good evening, Council President Sinapi, honorable members of the City Council, Council Solicitor Walsh, and City Clerk, Ms. Dambrowska. My name is Sean Galligan. For those who are here that do not know who I am, I serve as the chair of the Warwick School Committee, and it's both an honor and a privilege to be here this evening. The school committee and the school administration has been meeting bi-weekly. We've maybe missed 1 or 2 meetings between council having conflicts or the school department having conflicts since January. But every other Friday we've met pretty consistently with 4 members of the Honorable City Council, 2 members of the school committee who derive from the fiscal subcommittee, and the other members of the administration. When we last met, it was thought that it would be a good idea to really, I want to give Councilman Muto from Ward 6 credit. He stated we need to really give the full narrative behind what is driving a school department budget. What are the costs? What are the expenditures? How do we get to our number? And it was at that time that both the school committee and the school department agreed that the best way to do that would be, hey, let's have a joint meeting. which was entertained by the council president, and we're very appreciative of Council President Sinapi for taking us up on our offer. So this is not only to help provide additional insight or context into the figures that go behind the school department's budget, but it's also to provide insight and context to the fiscal bubble that popped, as well as, kind of address public confidence and trust in the school department and the school committee's oversight of the numbers. Tonight, we're joined by many members of the school administration, but it's with great honor and privilege that I introduce the individual that will be presenting at this time, Acting Superintendent William McCaffrey. I forgot to state that so that way we do not violate the Open Meetings Act. The two individuals from the school committee who will be speaking this evening, if questions are directed towards the school committee, are myself. And then if there's any questions relative to pre-COVID or during COVID, use of ESSER funds, my colleague, who is the longest tenured veteran on the school committee, Mr. David Testa, citywide representative, he'll be answering those questions. So those are the two individuals that will be able to answer questions tonight, so that way we do not violate the Open Meetings Act. Thank you.
Members of the City Council, Council President, I'd like to thank you for agreeing to this meeting this evening to go over the finances of the Warwick School Department, to answer some of your questions. This was an agenda that was created by the City Council. We agreed to it, and we want to provide you with the necessary information so you can make your best judgment when voting on a budget next week. The budgeting process of the school department starts in December. This year, we've had input from the Auditor General. Our budget is driven by the Auditor General's. He required us to submit a deficit reduction plan. That deficit reduction plan has driven everything we've done to date to prepare a budget for the City Council to review. We've stuck to the plan. We've met with the Auditor General on a regular basis. The city administration attended those meetings as well. When we did submit our initial deficit reduction plan, the Auditor General was pleased with what we had presented. He said, this is a start. There weren't any other questions from anyone else in the room. But if you look at the record, we have submitted a deficit reduction plan on how to address the deficit, the big elephant in the room. I appreciate the agenda items that were put forward, because it'll give some clarity to questions that council members and citizens have had over the past 6 months. We'll have an opportunity to tell the story of what happened, why it happened, and hopefully it answers every question that you have. Give me a moment, I'll start our slideshow. The first item we want to look at this evening are budget trends, forecasting methods, and budgeting. On non-staffing budgets, we use a few different approaches to determine the dollar amounts that we have derived in the FY26 budget. We use a zero-based budgeting model for all departments. The departments work on their individual budget starting in December, January. And then they present their budgets to, we call it court, the central office review team. The central office review team will question what's in the zero-based budget, what's in the descriptions, and is it something we really need to help support the kids. Budgets are based on actual quotes. Transportation, as you know, we have a contract with First Student that's based on a quote. We have the breakdown of the charge for large buses, small buses, vans, and things of that nature. Healthcare is derived from a figure that's produced from the healthcare provider. Currently, we have WB for our health insurance. We are looking at other options at this time, and we're waiting to hear back on what that cost would be. It's subject to change, that dollar amount for healthcare. Finally, other areas of insurance are driven based on actual quotes. Some other areas of projections we focus on would be the utilities. With the utilities, we use projections based upon information we derive from the Public Utilities Commission and what rate changes are going to be for the upcoming year. There's also some trends on some supplies related to inflation. Depending upon the weather, when we're ordering food products, it varies on the charges of things of that nature. Staffing needs are forecasted based on course requests at the middle level and the high school level. Those course requests are first, we fill the graduation requirements for the students. And with that, we're able to build a schedule that's efficient. It's based upon what graduation requirements are needed at the high school level, what requirements are needed at the middle level. We don't have empty classrooms with teachers sitting in there. We have teachers in classrooms based upon student need and based upon contractual obligations in our collective bargaining agreement. Some of the cost drivers that we have, and the city has as well, contractual increases, unfunded mandates. At the school level, we have out-of-district tuitions that we have very little control over that we have to pay. If we don't pay, they'll take it out of our state housing aid. Some of the challenges that happen currently in the city, we see a positive in construction happening in the city. We see new housing. We see also neighborhood turnover. When I mean neighborhood turnover, I look at my mother's street. My mother's house is for sale. A couple of her neighbors have recently passed away. Their house is for sale. The neighborhoods are starting to turn over in Warwick. And we have had an increase in new housing stock that's been for sale over the last 4 years in the city. The evolution of curriculum and special education audits also drive how we operate. Everyone has an opinion on how we should support kids. Some of the ways that we support kids are driven by regulation, by law. Special education, our district is audited. All our special education services are audited. You'll hear a presentation later today on how we determine how we support special education. Some unfunded mandates. I have a link here. I have 37 pages of unfunded mandates that I can provide you. I don't want to bore you this evening with all the mandates that are out there, but I would love to share it with you so you can read it. You can see some of the unfunded mandates that are out there, and you would be surprised at what we're required to provide for services, and they also drive cost. Operational efficiencies. As you know, since November, we have had a challenge in our finances for the Warwick schools. The last 3 months, we have revamped our finance office. We have a new controller. We have a grants controller. We have a new executive director of finance, all experienced, and they have been doing an excellent job. We've been interacting with the city finance office on a regular basis. Ask your own people, see what they think of the finance department that we have now, and I'm sure you'll be impressed what they have to say. We have been streamlining purchasing. Twice a week we meet for approvals. We vet every single purchase, whether it's $1.50 or it's $5,000 or $20,000. We are looking at our building usage fees, and we're also establishing a new software to manage our building usage. We are looking at other building usage fees across other cities and towns to see if we're at market rate. I believe we're a little bit below market rate when we lease out our facilities. It's time to adjust our rates to make sure we're adequately receiving funding to help support any damage that may happen as renting out the facilities. We have been increasing our grant oversight process. We are trying to capitalize on indirect cost recovery in our buildings as we've been putting in new HVAC systems. We are looking at a building management system for climate. So when no one's in a room, lights go off. When people walk down the hallway, lights come on. When people aren't in the building, we have it programmed where it's cooler in the building. When people are actually using the classrooms, we have it at an appropriate temperature. But we're using these to help operational efficiencies. We have been collaborating with the city. As recently as today, our new finance director sat down with the finance director for the city of Warwick, and they're looking to partner when they can to save money. For example, this year we've had an increase usage on our pest control, and in speaking with the finance director here, they seem to be getting an excellent rate on servicing the 18 buildings that the city has. So we're looking to possibly go in together and achieve efficiencies looking to put it out to bid as a larger group, thus saving funds and using every dollar wisely. That's just one example. Warwick Public Schools purchasing procedures. At this time, I would ask Kayla Quirk to come forward to review these purchasing procedures. I believe there were one or two council members that were at the last Budget Commission meeting, and at that Budget Commission meeting, we did review our purchasing. I would like Kayla to review it for the members that weren't there. And I would also add, one thing that I did not say is the Budget Commission process has been working very well. The school department's finance the area and the city's finance area have worked cooperatively, and payments are being made. People are processing requisitions. There hasn't been any slowdown, and I would like to thank Lynn and Angie for keeping that moving. Thank you very much. I know you have your plates full to begin with, and I want to thank you for helping the schools and the kids. Especially today, we had an event at Pilgrim. It was a senior day, and it was very important that vendors were paid, and through teamwork, we got it done. We're one city. Teamwork. The kids had a successful day, a memorable day as seniors at Pilgrim High School. At this time, I'd like to introduce Kayla Quirk.
Hello. My name's Kayla. I oversee the purchasing and food service departments for Warwick Public Schools. And I'm just going to take you through our purchasing process. This is just an overview of some of our purchasing thresholds. If it is $500 or less, we will use the direct payment process by using our online business accounts. We have a few online business accounts with Amazon, School Specialty, Staples, and WB Mason, all of which we have contracted rates on different purchasing consortium contracted discounts added to those accounts. So whenever a secretary purchases through one of those online websites, they are getting the best price possible at that time. And we definitely compare between those sites whenever we are seeing a purchase come through. If it's $1,000 and up, we ask that 3 vendor quotes are provided as price comparisons, and we're always going to go with the lowest price. If it is $5,000 and up, that's when we have an internal bid process, or we purchase off the Rhode Island MPA or with a vendor on a purchasing consortium. We're a part of many different purchasing contracts such as MHEC, Sourcewell, Omnia Partners, and any of the state MPAs. And of course, anything over $5,000 does require school committee approval. So we put together those documents for those monthly meetings. And then if it is $10,000 and up, that's really where we're hitting like the construction projects. There's always going to be a bid process no matter what, if it's 10,000 or up. Or, well, I should say, unless we're going off of a purchasing contract, but most of the time we are doing a formal bid process. And as you can see listed down below, we are within state procurement laws, and our purchasing thresholds are below that. So it has been working for us. And next, I'm going to just take you through our approval process. So
Actually, Kayla, quick question for you. The process on the previous page, is that a in a revised process based on what you guys have worked with the Budget Commission, or is this something that has been in existence and you've been following throughout the years?
This has been in place. There's always cases that kind of exceptions are made where if it's an emergency request, we do have an emergency request process where the superintendent and school committee chair will be emailed with the request, and then if it gets through that approval process, we will go forward with the request.
What happens if my expense is between 500 and 1,000?
Well, so it does, so those, there'll be a requisition created, to be a purchase order. There are sometimes cases if it's under $500 where it's like the vendor will provide particular services up front, and then payment would be processed as a direct payment directly to the vendor. But anything in between that anything there other than our business accounts will have a requisition and a PO as part of the process. All right. So next I just wanted to explain the internal approval process. Next, I'll take you through the flow of a requisition to a purchase order. But first I wanted to outline the approval flow that we have worked into our finance system. So whenever a request is submitted, it will first always go through the budget manager. Budget managers are either school principals or department directors. And then after that, it gets to the purchasing office. That UCOA approval at step number 2 is where we review the backup documentation as well as the chart of accounts to make sure it is compliant with RIDE's UCOA. And then next is a 3-part approval. If it is grant funded, it will go to the grants manager to review the grant award. And then if it is a technology related purchase, that's when it goes to the director of technology to review. And if it's facilities related, that's when it goes to the facilities manager. This is helpful so that way these departments can make sure that if work needs to be done in the buildings, facilities is aware of it. And that's also a point where they can kind of check and see if it's stuff that they can do rather than using an outside vendor. And then with IT, it helps to make sure that we're purchasing the same type of technology. Next is NISS, which is my part in the approval process. That's where it's a second set of approvals from the purchasing office. So it's again just a second set of eyes looking at the chart of accounts, the backup and vendor selection. This is the phase where we're really going to look into the dollar value and whether or not it does need to go out to bid. And also if we find cheaper pricing with another vendor, we will provide that then to the requester. Finally, we have the finance director. This is for purchases under $5,000. This is when the finance director will be the final approval, which then gets it pushed to being a PO. If it's over $5,000, that's when it would then be held until we get approval by school committee. Right now, we have a little bit of a different process with the Budget Commission because everything is going through them for approval prior to purchase. So this has been a reminder to everyone, like, so even those under $500 purchases, they're going. So if you're at some of those meetings, you would have seen, like in a previous meeting, we had $1.96, $2, like at a meeting for approval. So those things are still going through. First, right now, we have an internal deficit committee is what we've been calling it, which is the superintendent, Jeff Taylor, and myself, and we review all of those purchase requests. So they are vetted before they make it onto the agenda for the Budget Commission meetings. Once it's come through that internal approval process, we move it into a folder that's pending Budget Commission approval. Once we get it approved at that budget commission meeting, then it filters through the remainder of the approval process, where if it needs school committee approval, it will still go to school committee. We've been kind of lining it up based on which meeting kind of comes first, but we're making sure we're getting approval from both parties. And next, I just have a little flow chart to kind of explain from the beginning to the end of the purchasing process. A school needs to make a purchase. The very first step is that requester, which could be a teacher, it could be a department head, school staff, a clerk, principal, whoever it is, they will get together their documentation and budget information and send that request to their admin secretary. There's certain people that are responsible for actually submitting the requisition within our finance system. So some of that could mean like the director of elementary secretary does it for all the elementary schools, or director of secondary secretary does it for all the secondary schools. So those requests get over to them. They'll enter the requisition into our finance system. And then that is when the requisition is submitted for approval. And as I explained on the last page, it'll start and go through that approval flow as listed there. Once it's made it through all the proper approvals, it will be processed into a purchase order, and then it can be submitted to a vendor to have an order placed. So that is just a basic overview. And thank you.
The next area we want to look at it would be the current financial status. We want to explain to the city council what happened. There were budget inefficiencies with out-of-district tuitions. There was unrealistic FY25 planning. There was an improper summer payroll accounting. We did not achieve some of our FY24 efficiencies. Healthcare, we've had some members that have significant conditions, and it's pushed the cost of healthcare up. We had poor grant oversight management. We have $14 million in grants. With that said, we have an assistant controller who is monitoring grants only. That is her role. And we had very positive results with having that position. The new complement in the finance office is making a difference. There was some COVID era budgeting distortions. What I mean by that is that there were projections made on light items and not realizing that some items were funded by ESSER funds. So in those projections, they should have looked to the ESSER funds and the general funds to determine the projection and what it should be. Addressing some of the structural issues, we've verified all the projections and the actual quotes. All staffing positions are confirmed. Correct accounting for summer payroll. Some of the overages and savings. I know that there have been questions out there. Councilman Lattiser's had questions on this. We were looking at overages and salaries of $5.47 million, benefits of $901,000. Electricity, we missed the mark at $625,000. We have Munis that was not budgeted for, but it is needed. Munis would be our financial management system. Currently, we have Alio as our management system, and we're transitioning to Munis. Our new executive director of finance came in, has evaluated the system, and he feels that it's in the best interest of the district to change over to Munis. Substitute pay was off. Again, that goes back to one of those, goes back to the COVID ESSER general fund projections. It should have been looked at what was in the ESSER funds along with the general funds. Savings, non-staffing expenses, we've tightened through the new approval process. To date, we have booked $2.89 million in cuts recorded for FY25. This excludes vacancies and positions. Now, in the current FY26 proposal, we've made a reduction to WTU and WISE, in the WISE membership per contract and allowances. Staffing efficiencies determine the least programming disruption. You know, the budget, I believe, Ms. Ruggiero, you're going to come forward. You want to take care of this piece here on student needs and how they're prioritized.
Good evening, everyone. Excuse me. My name is Kim Ruggieri. I'm the Director of Human Resources. Obviously, we all know that staffing and salaries is the biggest piece of the Warwick Schools budget. So we wanted to give you more of a granular look at how we come to the staffing that we have. All the decisions that are made, and I'll get into each more specifically, but they're based on enrollment and course selections. We have contractual requirements for class size. It's easy to look at maybe a reduction of just, say, 100 students, for sake of argument, and say, oh, 100 students divided by 26 students, and give you a number of teachers to reduce. But it doesn't really work that way because those 100 students are spread out over, in elementary, for example, 6 grades and 13 buildings. So you can't just say, take them as a group and divide by 26. We have to look at each classroom in each school, and we have to look at special ed students that are incorporated into that roster, that those are included into that 26. And we all know that although it's a contractual requirement, it's also best practice to have smaller class size. So we stay in within the class size language of the contract, but again, our focus is on student education and making sure that they're getting the educations that they deserve. So just to give you a little breakdown, this is what the elementary office does on a daily basis. They're looking at enrollment for every class, every grade. It has special education students mixed in there. This was first, our staffing was first done earlier in the year to make our April 1st deadline to get it to the school committee. And already we've had additional enrollments, so we already have classes that are over. Now we have to start looking at, what is more cost effective? Do we transport students to the neighboring school? Do we open up a classroom? Do we look at split classrooms? All of these things have to be considered. And like I said, this changes daily. So we have to then every day reassess and go through and make sure that we're being fiscally responsible while providing the education that the students are entitled to. At the secondary level, it's done a little differently. The students pick their courses in high school, so then the administration goes through, they determine how many sections of each class is needed, they determine how many teachers are then required for those sections. Sometimes you can't just look at, you have so many ninth graders, you need so many sections of math. You know, maybe some of those ninth graders didn't pass ninth grade math, so they have to retake it in 10th grade. So now you have to have additional classes for those teachers. Then you have some students in their senior year who maybe have not passed a few of the courses and they're taking 2 maths, 2 Englishes. So again, it's not just a simple equation of number of students, number of teachers. There's a lot to be considered for that. So what we did this year, again, going through that process, the academic team, which consisted of the elementary director, the special ed director, the curriculum director, the director of secondary, they took all of this information and we determined that we could provide a quality education with 20 reductions to the WTU staff. That is our contractual limit that we can get, we can lay off each year. So we incorporated that number into our long-term deficit reduction plan. Again, class size limits, special education comes into play. There's both state and contractual limits to self-contained classrooms and even for inclusion opportunities for students. And then when we do have these reductions, we have to look at, is it really a true savings of a step 10 teacher? We all know the changes that were made to the state pension system several years ago. Many people signed up for one thing when they got out of college, thinking they could retire at a certain age, and now here they are 10 years later, and they're still working. They're step 10 with longevity, and they have to keep working to maintain their pension. So when we can reduce a position and it's a step 10 teacher, we realize that step 10 savings. However, the contract stipulates that all reductions are by seniority. So we have to look at, okay, this position was eliminated, who's affected by that? Then I have to look at their seniority date and see if there's anyone less senior than them with that certification. If that the answer is yes, then that person moves. Then I have to look at the next person under them. Do they have a dual certification? I then have to look at another certification. So sometimes a reduction of one position can affect upwards of 10 people. If there's a shared seniority date, which the union and I will be doing tomorrow, we have to have them in and draw numbers to determine who gets laid off, who gets involuntarily transferred. It's a very long process, but in the end, a lot of the time, it ends up to be a low-step teacher that is reduced at the end. So while we've reduced the position, it's not the savings that one would look at if they see we have, 87% of our, more than that, most of our teachers are on step 10. WISE is a little different. They don't have the contractual stipulations that WTU has. Again, we met with all the directors, and we determined that we could provide a quality education with 25 position reductions. This included clerical, this included custodial, this included teaching assistants, maintenance department. The special education TA staff is most determined by IEPs, whether it's a one-on-one that needs support, if it's a self-contained programmatic position, there's a ratio in that classroom. So if it's a high-need classroom, there would be 2 TAs in that room. So we have to look at all of that when we're determining where the TAs are going to be in each fiscal year. Kindergarten TAs are contractual in the teacher's contract, so each kindergarten class is required to have a kindergarten TA. When looking at our custodial and maintenance staff, we have to consider we have 21 campuses. We have had significant reductions throughout the years. We have to really look at how much can we cut them back any more and still maintain the sanity of the buildings. Same thing with clerical. We have scaled back significantly. We were just talking the other day, back 20 years ago, every single department in every high school had their own secretary. So you had an English, your math, the science, the social studies. We don't have any of that anymore. You have 3 clerks in the main office. So we've already significantly cut back. So there really is nowhere to go any further with that. And then with the WISE union in particular, who are hourly employees, if they work past the school day or past their contractual hours, they are entitled to overtime. Now, this sometimes is beyond our control because, again, we want to provide the students with all the opportunities for inclusion. So if they're in an after-school program, they are required to have support in that program. So we have to pay overtime for them. It's in their IEP, so we have to follow that. If there's an event with a certain number of people with food involved, we have to provide a custodian for the event. So again, we're obligated to pay the event fee for that. And finally, administration. We are looking at everything. We have had many new positions that are grant funded that are very much student-centered and support to the finance department. We have 2 staff athletic trainers on staff. There was a state regulation that each school department have their own. We were lucky to kind of get on this early, so we're in compliance with that. We've added a safety and security coordinator, a behavior specialist, and again, all of these positions are grant funded, so there's no impact on the general fund. There may be a few that have a percentage of it on the general fund, but for the most part, it's grant funded. We have a senior manager of student services. We have an assistant director of capital projects, the grants assistant controller, the SEL MTSS coordinator, and a 50% attendance and truancy officer. Now that person is making sure that the students who are in our schools really live in Warwick. So it's money well spent with a grant for somebody to make sure that we're spending our educational dollars on our Warwick students. With grant funding, we have to be careful. We cannot supplant existing roles and responsibilities with grant funding. So it's, the misconception is we can just take an existing position and find a grant for it. If it's federal funds, we cannot do that. It has to be a brand new position for that to happen. And then we have to deal with contractual renewal timeframes with administrators as well. We have employment contracts. We have to look at when people's contracts are up for renewal. If we go to eliminate any positions before that time, we're obligated to pay them out for the remainder of their contract. So we have to be very creative. We have to look at positions that are vacated through resignation or retirement and look at ways to restructure with the staff that we have, and then we can still get the educational needs of the district met. Thank you.
I believe I had mentioned this piece earlier. We are moving to Munis, and I believe the city of Warwick uses Munis for their financial management system. Next up is curriculum. It's your turn, Doc.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Lisa Schultz, the Curriculum Director for the Warwick Public School System. I am here to talk about an unfunded mandate that costs over $1 million every year just for renewals. But because we love our students and want the best for them, this, I believe, is a mandate that is money well spent. So the why green curricula, I have spoken about this before, but just to say it again, for those that haven't heard possibly, green doesn't mean eco-friendly. It means the best of the best. It's been green lit, and we have leaders, teachers, all different people that come together and look at these different curricular materials, make sure that they're the best of the best. They meet certain criteria. And so in 2017, RIDE partnered with this site that does that work called Ed Reports. And they've created lists that we can choose from. For example, our ELA program, English Language Arts at the elementary level, we had 9 to choose from. And in 2019, the high quality curricular mandate came down, where we had to start the process of piloting and adopting in ELA, math, and the newest one is science, which I'll get into in just a moment. So for elementary curricula, it was years ago, it was about 2018 when we finally adopted iReady, which is, I think, a wonderful program for mathematics, but it also contains our assessment for ELA and math at the elementary through middle school level. And 3 years ago, we piloted and then adopted Wit and Wisdom, but the science at the elementary level, they don't have anything yet that's ready and greenlit. So about Ready, we've looked at different things, but we really enjoyed Ready Math because it engages students in discourse, teaches them different mathematical ways of thinking, exploring, and if it's implemented correctly, it really does build upon itself and has students really understand the foundations of mathematics. And so there's a lot here. I tried to bold the most important things for those of you that are really detail-oriented. I'm sure you can look at this later tonight when you have nothing going on, because I know that that's what everybody wants to do here, right? Okay, sorry. Is it okay to make a joke? Is that all right? Okay, so anyways, this program, we loved it because it's rigorous and yet attainable for our students. It has a logical learning progression. We've been able to partner, and RIDE has actually helped in this way with professional learning, professional development. They've given us grant money to help pay for that with Ready. And one great component is the personalized learning path that the students can go on for both mathematics and ELA. What happens is the students go on, and it's a very adaptive system, and it starts to modify their learning path depending on how they answer certain questions. And it actually gets them ready for big high stakes testing like the SAT that now has that model as well. And so there's some links in here. Again, if you want to check this out, please do. We have different pacing guides that we've created based on Ready. It's been years of work in the making, but we noticed trends like, for example, if our students weren't doing well on the RICAS state assessment with geometry, geometric concepts, or fractions, all these different parts of the different mathematical domains, then what we did was we started to front load and give them that information earlier in the year so the students were ready for RICAS when it came down. We want to make sure our students are prepared and they don't see the state test as something that's as nerve-wracking as it has to be for some. And so there's differentiation, there's a teacher toolbox, there's tons of stuff that we can use to share out with parents so they understand what's happening in the brains of our students. My own children that are here tonight, hopefully they're not making too much of a spectacle of themselves up at the top, they use iReady as well. And one of my favorite components as a mom is it tells me exactly where their percentile ranks are, their strengths, and then things they can do to help really build up some of the areas of weakness. And so it puts it in layman's terms, let's put it that way. And so everybody can really access that. It also has tier 2 and tier 3 supports. Tier 2 are for our students who are struggling, maybe 1 year, 2 years, sometimes under grade level. And then tier 3 are our students that are really struggling with some of those concepts. They might have an IEP, they might have math intervention, for example. And so this, though, helps everyone by creating groups that make sense. And so teachers, instead of having this heavy mental load, they're able to say, okay, help me out here, Ready, and it will put people into groups and then give you lesson plans that are aligned, skills that you can work on with the students. So it's a very helpful tool. And I think overall, it's been received pretty well. Obviously, when we first adopt something, it takes some time to really have traction made, but we've noticed that our scores have risen, and that's a good sign that it's working and people are really buying in. Again, there's more supports for teachers here. And we have 2 fantastic lead interventionists that help drive this. We have Nikki Green. Can you just wave, Nikki? And Chrissy Barrett. They help move the learning at all of our elementary schools, not only with iReady, but other professional learning opportunities that they feel really helps move the mathematical thinking forward in the district. We're very proud of our math scores. We've beaten the national norms and the state as well. And so we're going to continue that forward movement. All right, Wit and Wisdom. We adopted this again 3 years ago. We had a large pilot. I believe it was the largest one in Warwick, at least that I can think of. I've been here for 7 years now. And we had 52 teachers across all of our elementary schools take part in this. And 99% of them, I don't know if that makes any sense because 52, that doesn't really make a good percentile, but I'd say about 99% said that they wanted Wit and Wisdom, so it was almost unanimous. These are some of the books that we have as part of the program, and what's great is that there's a lot of student voice captured in it. There's culturally responsive teaching embedded, and so our look-fors had a lot of those things, but we also wanted to make sure that students had authentic texts in their hands so that it wasn't just something like a basal reader that we used to have as kids, where you just kind of were looking at stories that were created, and this is real stuff that really relates to students and is very engaging. And so we've done a ton of work. I have 2 very talented coordinators on my team, both for ELA K through 12 and mathematics K through 12. They've been mapping out everything, making things with hyperlinks, making things as easy as possible, accessible as possible for the teachers to grab onto that. And so there are 4 modules. You can see that it goes through social studies concepts, scientific concepts. Art is heavily embedded. A lot of the lessons start with a portrait or a picture that they have to then talk about and have academic discourse about in their classrooms, which a lot of our students find to be very engaging. And again, you can read this later if you'd like to, but art, music, history, and science are heavily embedded. We also have geodes texts that are for our younger readers, and professional development is heavily embedded as well. and professional learning. One thing that we're really excited about are our instructional coaches at our Title I schools who have had almost 50 hours of in-depth training and are able to then take the concepts and really dive in deeply with their staff. And then they help the curriculum team then push out that knowledge to the other schools that are not title funded. The middle school. So with iReady, we started that process as well 8 years ago. Now we have StudySync for 4 years for our language arts program, and Open SciEd is our new science program. It looks like that will be K through 12 moving forward, but it has not been officially greenlit at the high school or elementary level yet, but it'll be so nice to have a K through 12 cohesive program for science. So ELA, grades 6 through 8, there's a lot of technology in this one, which some people might not like, but what's great about it is it's these small clips that really engage the learners right away and leads to some really rich discourse in the classrooms and engages students that might not really enjoy reading or language arts in general. And so it can, and you can see some of the little clips and thumbnails there from the program, but it's very engaging, and some of it even brings in some current events and things like that. Again, it went with our look-fors because the texts were relevant and also authentic for our students. There's a lot of embedded assessment, data tools, and then differentiation for all types of students, whether they're tier 1, 2, or 3. Open SciEd, it's an engaging hands-on curriculum. You should see these huge bins that the teachers received at the middle school level where they have to unpack it, but it's so fun for the students. They have to dig in. They're using bath bombs to create experiments. They're taking homemade bath bombs and then saying, okay, how is this different from one you could buy at Job Lot? And really digging into some really authentic scientific concepts. And so it's much different than what they're typically used to, just reading a book. Come on.
So
That's not
if we
science.
could please, going forward, keep it to the topic of the agenda. While this,
Oh, I'm sorry. I
while
thought
this
this
information
was-
is still
Sorry.
appreciated, we have to make sure we stay on topic, especially with the time constraints.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'll move forward. Yes, and so I'm sorry if I misunderstood the assignment, but this evening I wanted to stress that teaching and learning is of the utmost importance for our students, and that's why they go to school. And so the green curricular mandates, although very expensive, are well worth it. And so I just wanted to give you a little bit of an insight into that. Okay, high school. Again, we have English ELA and Reveal Mathematics, which are new programs. We really enjoy them. But again, to save time, you can check that out at your leisure. Just to continue with upcoming initiatives, we have science programs that are going to be added, that are unfunded mandates for the elementary and high school level coming down the pike very quickly. Social studies, they're now recommended by RIDE. They're not necessary. However, a lot of our texts are between 10 to 20 years old, and so we have to start buying new ones just to remain relevant to today's society. Also, the Multilingual Learners Department has new regulations that are coming down from RIDE as well. And so we have to add new staff members to meet those regulations to make sure we're not out of compliance. We also have to pay for mandatory suicide prevention training and curriculum each year, which is unfunded, and ongoing science of reading training. We're almost done with that, thankfully, but that total has cost over $500,000. Thank you for your time today.
So if we get a pause for one moment, Councilman Lattiser.
Oh, yes, thank you, Mr. President. While I appreciate all of the information that we've been provided, I would ask that we pause this presentation to move on to the questions and comments and financial concerns from the City Council.
So if I'm not mistaken, I just want to double check first. I believe there's a brief bit on special ed, and the only reason why I want to make sure it's heard is because there are questions that we have been asked to put forward on behalf of some of the councilmen. So, but for that, I would have fully agreed.
We promise it'll be brief. It also is one of the major cost drivers in the budget. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Special education is one of the course drivers in the budget. So I think it's important to hear this piece of the presentation.
Much appreciated.
Good evening. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our special education department and what we provide our students. I will just keep this abbreviated, but there is a lot of information in the presentation that hopefully will help to answer some of those questions. Just to inform people, special ed under IDEA, we are required to provide students with a free and appropriate education. We have to provide that in a least restrictive environment. Along with that, the students who have an individualized education plan. And within this, sometimes students are required to have a one-on-one aid. They could have therapy sessions, nursing. Sometimes it's a one-on-one nurse, assistive technology. I could go on. But when an IEP team does decide that that is what the student needs to provide FAPE, we are legally obligated to do that. Very proud of what we're able to offer in Warwick. We have a full continuum of services in the district, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll just summarize. We have general ed classrooms. All of our special ed kids are gen ed kids first, and we are bringing special education to them. So if they require pull-out services, a teacher can pull them out, push in. We are bringing it to them. We have small group classrooms for students who need intensive academics. For students who have emotional and behavioral challenges, we have programs across the district to support those students. We really do try to go through that continuum to provide students with what they need. However, when we're unable to provide that and provide them with FAPE within the district, we do have to go to an out-of-district placement. So those non-public special ed schools, and that's where they're able to get more intensive behavioral and therapeutic treatment. We also, I'm just going to mention this because we're very proud of this program, our Bridges program, which is our adult program where we provide job training, independent living, and community-based instruction. So I just do want to just give a quick snapshot of the public, non-public special ed placements because they cost a lot of money, right? Having our students out of district, it's not something that we take lightly. Right? We feel really strongly about educating our students as much as possible within the district. And it is only used when we cannot provide the support, the level of support that they need. And again, that is determined by an IEP team. So when an IEP team comes together, that's decided, we are required to do that. The cost. So we're legally required, like I said, through their IEP, but we do not have control over the tuition prices. And we have a variety of non-public special ed schools. I think we have 23 in the state, and each one of them specialize in something different. So again, we can't control the cost, the tuition rates, they're set by them. And the thing that I want to stress is that it is really hard to budget for because we have our best guess, right, by looking at the historical patterns, but students sometimes move into the district and they're already placed in an out-of-district placement. So we are required to provide them in that setting, whatever is in their IEP. And I will let you read the rest of that yourselves. And one other thing, we did have a school support visit. So this is the audit that Superintendent McCaffrey mentioned. So every 5 years, the Department of Ed comes in and they make sure, just to summarize, they make sure that we are in compliance and we're following state and federal regulations. You can go through and see what they look for, but it definitely brought to light some of the things that we need to work on, right? Providing kids an education in a least restrictive environment, working on MTSS, preschool alignment, making sure that we have a solid preschool curriculum and a full continuum. And so a lot of our programming and what we had decided to do was based on some of our support visit. Leave that. Just another couple of things. We are legally obligated with Child Find. We have to locate and evaluate all students with suspected disabilities. So we do that through screenings, and I will let you read the rest later. But there's one other thing that I really want to be able to speak to because I didn't understand it initially. DCYF fiscal responsibility. So any student, a district is responsible for, financially responsible for any student who enters DCYF care. And so if their last known residence was Warwick, we are obligated to do that. So we have to provide tuition, transportation, and any related services that that they require. So, and this is for special ed and gen ed students. So this isn't just, but I think it's important to understand that it is something that we're required to do by law. So I can answer any questions after, but.
All right, so I know Councilman Lattiser, you had wanted to ask something.
Council President, if I
Pardon?
could just round out the presentation real quick.
I prefer you defer until the end, just because people have burning questions and they're chomping at the bit.
Absolutely, but given the intent of tonight's presentation, it was to provide a bigger kind of overview of what's driving the school department budget. And just these final points, I think, I know that Councilman Muto had expressed that this was both for the council's benefit and the public's benefit. So I just want to make sure that we're hitting the intent of the meeting, just not to waste your time. I also believe that we have a good idea of kind of what the question is going to be asked, so we could probably move through it expeditiously.
Is this
5 minutes, if you wouldn't mind.
Is this a demographic change?
Touch on it a little bit, but the admin will also touch on that. So if you want to just mind 5 minutes.
Sure.
So again, we appreciate this opportunity, and Councilman Muto, it was a great idea, and Councilman Lattiser, you know, he echoed his sentiments on that meeting that we had last Friday. And so, yes, this was pulled together very quickly, and I do want to publicly express my thanks to the members of the administration who did put together this presentation. I'm going to talk very quickly here because I committed to 5 minutes, so I'm going to move very fast. Budgeting for the school department is an imperfect process. It's backwards. The funding formula is forever changing, and nothing is guaranteed for the school department until the state passes the budget. And even then, it's not final. You know, the school department and the school committee pass our budget in the month of April, as you all know. It comes to you in the month of May, but it's not really, the city budget isn't fully funded until June after the state does their piece. Our enrollment can fluctuate for months. The budget, as I mentioned, is passed in April. However, students can come and go for months thereafter. It's not stabilized to a degree until the month of October, but even then thereafter, new students can continue to come in. One perfect example that was touched upon by the administration would be DCYF placements. They come in, the money doesn't follow the student. It's coming at all of your expense and the expense of all the taxpayers in this room. Not saying that those children should not come to a safe learning environment, but just saying that's an example of what drives up, and it's something that we cannot plan for. These reasons and many more are why we need to reframe how we view school budgeting. It's a moving target. We must staff according to student need and not perpetuate teacher to student ratios. Given that tonight you have heard about ratios, but also IEP requirements and obligation, also kindergarten requirements for staffing. There's substantial unplanned expenses that I can state to you firsthand as a sitting school committee member. We can't plan for them. They're primarily related to our facilities. Most emergency expenses I approve are related to those facilities, and they're constant. Our new director of finance for the city and we were on multiple of them each day, multiple times each week. And some of those costs can be covered via our property insurance. However, and I've stated this in the past publicly, our insurance provider is barely covering the bulk of these costs over the concerns that the school department is using the insurance dollars to renovate the facilities. I want to touch on the fact that other districts are facing a similar problem as Warwick, right? We're starting to see many districts lay off multiple teachers. We're also seeing many districts face the same fiscal challenges that we're facing. What do we all have in common besides students, teachers, adjunct faculty, and general operating expenses? It's those unfunded mandates. Former Councilman Tim Howe, who sat in that very seat there, he brought it up every year before this honorable body during the budgeting season. We're hoping to address that this year, and we need your help. Our budget. A lot of people in the community always question our budget and why we're the majority of the city's budget. And so this goes to Councilman Muto's point about educating the city. Why are we the majority of the budget? We have the largest workforce. We service the most daily customers. 8,000 students approximately daily are serviced by this department. Also, we have to account for the fact that it's not just 8,000. We're financially responsible for approximately 8,400, 8,300 students. So that goes into our budget as well. We staff the most employees. We have the most buildings. The only thing we don't have the most of is the largest fleet in this city. Our enrollment, as I mentioned, 8,000 students physically approximately enter into our buildings on a daily basis. But this city is financially responsible for students that go out of district, that go to private schools. We cover their transportation costs, and for the students that go to alternative educational learning environments, like a Bradley, for an example, or the Rhode Island Alternative Academy, West Bay Collaborative, and the like, many of which Ms. Barber just touched on. Our future, pre-K numbers are healthy right now in this city. So though we look at the student enrollment right now at the elementary level, which is, I would deem, pretty healthy, we have a very high influx of students coming in, and we have to be cognizant of universal pre-K at the State House. That is going through, and it seems like something that's gaining traction as well, that legislation. Our future challenges, last evening at our school committee meeting, you might have heard, the governor had a commission come in, evaluate our properties, specifically at the polling locations, assessing for ADA compliance. That's going to be a substantial increase. We're going to need that, whether it's through our standard operating budget annually or something outside of our MOE. We have our Gordon Administrative Building that's going to be very well, it's not going to have a lot of people in it after Holloman goes back to their facility. So we need to decide as a city, do you want us to stay there, or do you want us to go to a facility with fixed costs? Otherwise, we're going to need a sizable investment from the city. So with all of that being stated, tonight I hope that Councilman Muto, Councilman Lattiser, Council President Snappy, and he's not present this evening, Councilman Gebhardt, the 4 members of the council who we meet with bi-weekly, I hope that we met what you guys were looking for here and providing that additional context in addition to the numbers that you're going to discuss next Monday. But I would just like to state publicly, now that you've heard everything that we need to fund on a daily basis for our school department and the 8,000 customers that we service daily, or the 8,400 customers we're responsible for daily financially, you can see that the 0.29% contribution that we're receiving, it's going to be detrimental to our operations next year, and we're hoping for additional support next week. Thank you.
Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. President. Given the time constraints that we're facing right now for this meeting, I'm going to defer my questions and move it over to Councilman Muto, who has put in a significant amount of time, as has the school department, in preparing for this presentation. So I will stand down and defer to Councilman Muto. Also, Mr. President, I would also like to add that I will be requesting some period of time between now and 7 o'clock to allow questions from members of the public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So on a light note, one of my favorite books that you popped up there was Stone Soup, because Stone Soup, somewhat explains what we're doing in our school budgets, where we're adding a lot of different components to make education, make the meal, make it better. One of the things I'm still missing, and we could talk about this over the next week, is over the last 5 to 7 years, even though we've had a 14% decrease in student population, we have had increases within the subsegments that require the additional staffing support for each one of those. For example, we'd have the general pop. How has that changed or fluctuated to deliver? We've had special education. There's been a lot of information and a lot of focus on special education. Our special education population, and I may have these numbers wrong, but we've increased by 20% over the last 5 years of the number of students that we focus on special education. I know there's not an easy equation, but I took calculus in high school. This is a calculus / algebraic example. There are inputs and outputs that we can at least apply to the different subgroups to get us at least within a ballpark of what it will take to educate someone from a one-on-one to a special education. And when we look at the budget, we'll look at the increase in budget. And again, I'm speculating right now, but this is what I am looking for to understand is the schools are not static. The budget process has been static. And we need to adjust the budget process to mirror what is going on in the educational component. So that's what I will be looking for next week, to understand what your drivers are. When I say cost drivers, that's exactly what I mean, is we look at it as a student and educational centric model, but we look at it as to, I don't want to get too geeky on you, but it's a constraint model. You need to build your constraints of what you need to supply for, in this part, it is education. So we have inputs, we have our constraints, we have our requirements. We need to understand that, because when you come to at least the public or the council, when it comes to educating students, not every student costs the same amount of money to educate. And, again, I'm not an expert in this area. My reading level is stone soup, which I love. But the goal is educating us how you guys are doing, meaning the education, the school administration, the teachers, the change in education over the last 5 to 7 years, and what those drivers are. So yes, this was a very good presentation. I appreciate it, but that would be one of the first things that I need to understand to at least make a case for more than a 0.5%, whatever the increase is. I will take a step back. I do want to make sure that the last 4 months I know has been a scary and uncertain part of our community. We started the year with a $9 million deficit. That $9 million deficit had to do with bad, poor, incomplete, incompetence when it comes to finances. We had last May, June, when we went through the budgets, we had a budget that was presented. We had what the potential cuts or staffing levels would be. 6 weeks later, ESER positions got moved over after the budget was approved, and that was one of the key drivers to the $9 million among some other items. How can you guys guarantee, when I say guarantee, best guess that when you come for our budget next week, that 6 months from now, we don't have another $9 million deficit? What type of controls will you have in place? And again, I realize it. There are changes. It is a moving target. But I will add, I am very confident in the new finance area that you have. You have some really good folks that are working. I think you need one other position, and I will say it here on the council. I believe you need a staff accountant. That will round out your positions within your financial area that will help control more and more of your expenditures. Let's get straight. Talking about capital expenditures. So looking back over the last several years, what I've seen to be some budget busters or items that do not help the budget and the operating budget is when a septic system bursts or when there's some other fire. You guys have fires once in a while. One of the things I recommend that you guys work with the Budget Commission on is to establish some type of capital account that you can build and maintain and operate your maintenance and items that come up. Other school systems have been doing it. There's up to 5 school systems that differentiate capital accounts from operating accounts. And from just what I've observed in the budget process, some of your budget items got sucked into capital and created some deficits. There are some obvious examples that we need to, call out, which is understanding the capacity of our schools. Are we, and I'm not saying this is ready for next week, but are we going to address what is the mix of schools that we need throughout our system? Do we need 13 elementary schools? I'm not saying we do or not, but do we? When it comes to middle school, high school, one of the things that I see a deficit in is career and tech. Career and tech is hot, but it seems to be, I hate to say it, the ugly stepchild, because maybe it's because of these unfunded liabilities and everything else that is coming from RIDE that makes everyone want to go to college. So that's my soapbox for that. So I'm gonna yield to see if anyone else has some questions or answer, and then I'll go through my other questions.
I would like to respond to some of your comments. The budget that we presented that was approved by the school committee, we have made our best effort to account for every single position in that budget. We have made it every effort to account for any benefit package that's in that budget. Every individual has been accounted. It is budgeted for. You want to know how we won't have a $9 million deficit next year. Starting in building this budget, we built it based upon a deficit reduction plan that the Auditor General asked us to present. That's what we have done. When I do the conclusion this evening, I want to demonstrate to you that if we don't follow that plan that the Auditor General wants us to follow, we will be in deficit. So it's crucial in order to support education in Warwick that we increase this local aid from 0.029% to 2.2%. 2.2% with the increase in state aid, with the deficit reduction plan presented, you will see that we will come out of a deficit by FY29. If we don't adequately fund this year's budget, we will be in a larger deficit by FY29. I'm not trying to threaten anyone. It's the reality. It's as you said earlier, it's a math equation. I would say that career and technical education is robust in this city. We have over 500 students participating in district programs. We have 156 students who participate in an exploratory program at Tollgate as well. So we have over 650 kids participating in career and technical education, whether it's a half-year course or it's a program a student has chose to participate in. So we do have strong numbers in career and technical education. As you know, career and technical education is a backdoor to school choice. The regulations that were adopted in 2014, there's been some state law that's been passed about substantially similar programs. And with substantially similar programs, I believe we do offer high quality programs. Our programs are aligned to the standards that are established by the Career and Technical Education Board of Rhode Island, and that we do have high-quality programs in this district that I'm proud of and that we all should be proud of.
Thank you on that. And actually, just if you wouldn't mind staying there.
Sure.
So one of the other budget issues are we lose students because of this pathways hell. All right. It doesn't make sense. We have comparable programs. How open, how realistic is it to sue RIDE, to challenge them and to make a decision that, you know, our programs are superior to do that?
We have approved programs that, based upon the standards established by RIDE, which all the other CT programs in the state have to comply with. I am not opposed to challenging RIDE if I feel that one of our programs is substantially similar to another district. We have, at this point, I would not like to discuss any litigation that's ongoing. I would I'd like to meet with you privately to discuss any litigation regarding CTE. The challenge that we have in this district and in this city, and we're starting to address our facilities. We're building 2 brand new high schools. They're long overdue. They should have been built 10 years ago. As I ride around the city, having grown up in the city and am currently a taxpayer in the city, I get concerned when I go to Mickey Stevens and I'm behind Mickey Stevens. That was a state-of-the-art baseball facility, recreational facility when I was a kid. It no longer is a state-of-the-art recreational facility. I'm glad the city's moving on making improvements. When I go to Ben Street and I look at Ben Street, that was a state-of-the-art Little League at one time. When I go down to North Country Club Drive, that was a state-of-the-art facility. Warwick has a lot to offer. It's a great city. It's got a lot of resources. We need to take pride in our city, and I believe the current administration and everyone in this room does have Warwick pride. I believe the high schools are the rebirth of Warwick pride. I supported the $50 million bond, even though it has a portion of it has something to do with the schools. A portion of it has something to do with Warwick pride in making Warwick the best city that it can be. And we need to stay on target with that. I'm ashamed when I go to Johnston, when I go to East Providence, when I go to Cranston. They have better facilities than us. And I believe we are a wealthier community. We have people that care about this city. And I think it's time that we make a decision. Where do we want to go with Warwick? Do we want to fight and say it's us against them? We are one city. It's time to put the city first, support the schools. If we aren't adequately funded, we can't successfully run the schools, and we'll have no choice but to be in the same position we are in today. I've been in the district for 3 decades, and we've seen the budget cycles. We can look at the audits. We can look at the financial troubles we experienced over time. You know, it's time to step up to the plate, have pride. Let's have the best city in this state. I believe in the city. I think it's time that we put the city first. And we're one city. It's not us against them. It's not the schools and the city. We're one city in Warwick. One organization.
I appreciate
And I'm sorry if I'm being passionate.
No,
but
you can be passionate, absolutely.
I've witnessed this city change in my lifetime, and it's time to put Warwick first.
Yep. So I agree with that. So don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere, Bill. Hey, Bill. I know you say we're one city, but I'm an old vets graduate, and you know, Pilgrim was always our enemy, so they'll always be. I'd like to now focus on the general fund expense summary that was sent to the Budget Commission. I have a few questions on a few of the line items.
Sure. Give me a second to pull that up.
Yep. I'll wrap up my questions within a couple of minutes. So while Bill's waiting for it, I'm looking at a spreadsheet that is a general fund expense summary for fiscal year in 2019 to
What
20.
item would you want to address?
Yep,
I've studied
so-
this budget inside and out, so I probably know it very intimately. the
All right, we'll
account you're
start
thinking
with a nice easy one here. So category 58901 is other miscellaneous expenses. That is zeroed out in every year except for the fiscal year 25 adjusted budget. Can you explain what that
25 or 26?
fiscal year 25 adjusted budget? There's an amount of $2,898,239.14.
FY 25?
FY 25 adjusted budget. It's there. It just looks out of place because it's not in any other budget.
That's the parking place. Yes. That's the account that we're placing all the budget cuts to show where the budget cuts are for the current FY 25 budget.
Okay.
And that's where it's parked based upon our consultant. We were told to put them there so they can stand out and be recognized.
Okay. So that number shouldn't be added to the bottom line then. That's really a pull.
That would end up reducing the deficit.
Reducing the.
Yeah.
Okay. And then of that 2.8 million, would you mind going over high level of what those
Yes.
types of cuts are?
Yep. Yep. I can ask Kayla to come forward. You have that spreadsheet, Kayla? On the cuts? Or Yaman, do you have those cuts? Give us a second. What's another question you might have? I don't want to delay any time here.
Yep, it's okay. There's just so many lines here. I should have highlighted them.
It's 149 pages of lines.
Yes, there is. I can't quite find it, but it has to do with property and tangible tax. Oh, here it is. 58401, real and personal property tax payments.
It would probably be on leased equipment.
Leased
I would
equipment.
imagine it's on leased copy equipment that we don't own at the end of the lease
Okay.
by the structure of the financing.
Okay. Another one would be the healthcare line. So would you mind just talking a little bit more about the efforts you've been making to get a handle on the healthcare, especially the high increase going from 25,000 from a family plan to over 30, and it just seems out of whack compared to other.
That's based upon an actual number provided by WB. As you know, we are shopping around for healthcare at this time, and we should have some additional information within the next few weeks.
Awesome.
And I believe I provided a detailed report to Councilman Lattiser, and I believe he had a consultant review the material. Correct me if I'm wrong, that the numbers were pretty true, right, Councilman Lattiser? The healthcare numbers were pretty true that I had provided you. You had sent it to a consultant to review, and did he have any feedback for you, the consultant you utilized?
I don't have those numbers with me right now, so I don't recall exactly where my position was on it.
But you didn't hear anything back like this is way off base, right? You didn't hear anything where we were off base in any way, that the numbers were true, right?
Repeat that again.
I said, after reflecting upon the healthcare numbers, they didn't come back and say these numbers aren't right. They're true based upon the calculations that we provided you.
Yeah, I don't recall them saying that they weren't right.
Okay, thank you. Kayla's going to present some of the reductions that you had requested.
Perfect. Thank you.
Do you want me to connect it at all, or?
If it's easy.
So I actually have our finance system shown here. So this is me pulling up the account that has all of the cuts, and this is just a holding account where we moved all of those reserved funds into. So if you look over here, we have everything labeled as to like what the cuts are. So you can kind of see the breakdown there. The very first cut is 40,000 for an athletic trainer. The second one is, which was presented at one of our school committee meetings, director approved cuts. This is like out of expense lines. So it's a mix of different departments' budgets that moved funds over. Then there is fuel oil cuts. And then we had a second round of budget manager approved cuts. And then that last one is the pension, the WISE pension reductions for fiscal year 25. And that amount is based off of like what had already been processed like in our system. So it was, so there will be another entry done to be the full amount that was approved at school committee.
On that WISE cut, was that a accounting error, or is it a truly when not putting $1.5 million into the pension fund?
I believe it was approved that we wouldn't be putting it into the fund. We deferred.
Deferred, okay.
That
So will that have to be a makeup payment in the future, or?
Yeah, sorry.
Part of the deficit reduction plan we submitted to the Auditor General, we deferred payment to the pension fund. Over a 4-year period, we're adding $750,000 a year to maintain the level of the pension fund. And we also, at our school committee budget meeting, the school committee made the decision to put an additional payment on that to make sure that it's adequately funded and the fund balance isn't reduced. It's one of the stronger pension funds in the state, never mind the city. I believe it's funded at approximately 82%.
And the actions will keep it at 82% because?
Yes,
All right.
yes. Pending market conditions. As you know, it's like a roller coaster day by day.
Awesome. Thank you. My last question, this could just be an accounting, is I'm looking at the various salary line items where we've had the adjusted budget item versus the actual, and then the remaining balance. When I do just back of the envelope math here, and I'm looking at it from the numbers are, I'm assuming, from May 2nd. So I'm using May and June to project forward. The dollars seem to be more that remaining than if we just straight lined it out the next 2 months. Is there a reason why there would be more money in there? Is there something that needs to get paid through the summer?
Yeah, yes. There's also summer pay in that calculation.
Summer pay.
So there's payments spread out over the summer.
All right. So the summer pay is still for the fiscal year 25, but it's
Yes.
when the teachers and everybody else.
Yes.
Okay. So that's
And that's what's will throw you off looking at that line.
all right.
And it's related to contractual obligations that we meet.
Okay. I was just hoping it was another math error. I'll hold the rest of my questions.
So I have a series of close-ended questions that some of the council members going to be present for would like asked. And if they're not able to be addressed tonight, then the expectation would be between now and the budget meeting that they'd be addressed. And so the first one, and there's like 5 of these all around the same vein. So if you can't do one, just say so, and we'll just assume this, the rest for all, I'll just list them quick. So how many students have IEPs currently? It's okay if the answer is we have to get back to you. Because then the subsequent ones are, how many students have one-on-ones currently? How many new IEPs and one-on-ones in a typical year? So we'd want to look at probably 3 years worth. how many evaluations for new IEPs and new one-on-ones since January 1st, and how many evaluations for new IEPs and new one-on-ones in a typical year. So again, we'd want to look at 3 years worth.
Let me answer what I have available here based on October 1 enrollment. This is a date that RIDE uses for collecting enrollment data. Special ed population, 1,618. I'm sorry, my eyes aren't what they used to be. Change in the special ed population is 86. Special ed education percentage is 21%. Currently, we have 868 teachers. With that, we have cuts that have been approved by the school committee, so that at our next school committee, that'll be reduced down by 20. We have special education teachers, we have 179. We have number of TAs, we have 247. Number of one-on-one TAs, we have 51. Does that help answer some of the questions that you have?
That'll definitely go towards it, but
Okay.
those we'll want direct answers on the other questions
Okay.
between now and the budget meeting. And again, it's all right if it's not possible to do it tonight. It's understandable. Then there's two more. These
Okay.
aren't close-ended, so I didn't want to lead with them. One was any plans to incentivize teachers who are a top step to take retirement.
The challenge with retirement at this point is they changed the system. We can get that number to you, but over 80% of our staff members are on top step at this point. Most people can't retire till they're 62 to 66 years of age in the teacher retirement system currently. We will get you people who are available to retire. The challenge when people do retire, I know we always put breakage into our budget. Breakage doesn't come to fruition like it has in the past. We're not hiring first step teachers anymore. Typically what happens when there's a position that becomes available and people make application, you're looking at a 6th or 7th or 5th step teacher. So the breakage that you would achieve just doesn't happen anymore. We don't have a large pool of candidates. Not as many people are going into public education like they have in the past. The business industry has been booming for the last few years. And, if I were strong we have people that are strong in sciences. Are you going to come out and work for $50,000 a year? Or are you going to go to pharmacy school and start with $120,000 a year? It's kind of it's an easy decision if you have student loans and you're strong in the area. We will definitely provide that information for you. Any other questions that you may have, Mr. President?
There was one more that we were requested to ask by members of the council who weren't present. Any thought to making the time period longer to reach top step for future hires so that we don't end up with such a top-heavy department? These aren't my words, I'm just reciting it.
Sure. That would be a contractual obligation in our collective bargaining agreement. And obviously it'd be something that we would pay attention to the next time we open up our collective bargaining agreements and negotiate. If you forward that list to us, we'll make sure we maintain it in our folder for our collective bargaining negotiations.
And then Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. So similarly, I don't expect you to have all of these numbers off the top of your head, but if this is something that we can receive before the full budget hearings, approximately how many students, that is, would-be students, Warwick residents, school age, who would be entitled to go to Warwick Public Schools are instead opting to go out of district, whether through a Pathways program or to a private school?
Sure. In the budget that we forwarded to you, I believe everyone should have received a budget booklet by now. You'll notice an area for out-of-district tuitions, and in that area should be able to see some detail on the number of students that are out of district. And I can get you that information in the morning, but it's definitely in our budget. We've budgeted for every single position that we are aware of that have intentions or are out of district at this time.
Thank you. A reason I bring that up is because, of course, I think it's very important to go through the budget line item by line item, find efficiencies, but I'm also curious, Why is it, and I don't mean, it's not always easy to get true and accurate data, especially when it comes to why someone is going through a pathways program, for instance, because if they give the wrong reason, then they're going to be called out on it, and it's going to be a problem for them. So we're not always going to get true and honest reasons. But if I'm understanding correctly and my recollection is correct from previous years, it seems that there's generally been a trend for more students to take that route of pathways or private schools rather than sticking with Warwick Public Schools. And so if we're able to better hone in on some of the reasons why they are opting to do so, making sure to provide those different options. We all know, and perhaps I'm saying this more for members of the public, that the money follows the student. And so that's literally tens of thousands of dollars, more or less, for every single student who's leaving our school system. So a little anecdote here. This is not exactly data-driven here. This is personal experience from back when I was in Warwick Public Schools. There would be occasions where there would be a state-mandated test that we were told, this does not affect your grade. I know from observing other students taking those tests way back when I was in grade school and talking to classmates back then, hard not to notice that some students would just go down the Scantron, fill in C all the way down, and then put their heads down. And of course, that would tend to tank test scores. But students would be less likely to do that if they were given a Pop-Tart. A Pop-Tart, some students took it more seriously because, hey, we're getting paid something. We're getting some sort of a reward or incentive. And you know, that little thing was the motivation they needed. I'm not here to say that we should put junk food in schools. Please don't take it that way. But if we can find some of these little things that make the difference between a student staying in Warwick Public Schools and opting into a pathways program, deciding, you know, convincing their parents, more or less, that there's always going to be a student-parent interaction when it comes to any of these decisions. And of course, the parents are going to be looking at, what does my kid want? If the kid really wants to stay in Warwick Public Schools, then the parent is probably going to keep them there rather than paying money to the private school, rather than going through all the logistics and all of the hassle of a pathways program. So I suppose that the lesson here, so to speak, is if we can find some little ways, efficient ways, maybe they might cost a little bit of money, but if we have good reason to believe that a little investment here and there, making sure that, that the schools have certain curb appeal, for instance, things like that, that might actually result in...
I agree with you.
Thank you.
I agree with you.
Yeah, sometimes that little bit of money might be what helps really keep the students here, builds school pride, and really stops that bleeding of the out-of-district tuition. That's all for the moment. Thank you.
Sure. And I believe it goes further. It's Warwick pride. It's not just the schools. It's we're all one. It's all about Warwick pride. And I'm pleased that the high schools have moved forward. I'm pleased that you supported the bond to work on the recreation facilities. You know, we have a great community, and our students deserve the best, and our citizens deserve the best. Mr. President, are there any other questions?
Yeah, just a few more briefly. And again, same thing as far as the expectation isn't that you're necessarily going to have all this on hand, because some of them aren't exactly small in their ask. An estimated cost associated with each mandate, so aka the Tim Howe question, and
$198 million.
And the goal would be to link up cost to mandate too, so that we have a better understanding of them and to help us better push for those changes. at the state level. But and also looking for more information on the substitute teacher budgeting issue. I don't need it now because it's just more just an informative thing. And also whether or not anyone has looked into the possibility of potentially merging school districts with a neighboring city or town. And if not the whole district, at least merging at least the administrative side of things. And again, you don't need to respond to any of that now, especially we are short on time. I want to make sure each council person at least has the opportunity to ask questions if they have any.
Okay. If you could send us that list, we'll address every one of your questions.
Absolutely. Does any other members of the council have any questions? Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. President. Superintendent, during the presentation, there was a few things that were stated, but weren't followed up with numbers. So this, again, is something you can get back to me on. I have a lot of questions here, but you're never going to be able to answer them all at this point.
Sure.
One was that there were tons of unfunded mandates. I'd like to know what each of those mandates are and what those costs are.
Well, as an example, there are certain regulations for transporting students. Transportation is a
No, I
mandated.
understand. I'm just going to feed
I
out
just wanted to
some of
give you an
these.
example, that's all.
I'm going to feed out some of these questions
Sure.
quickly. It was stated an improper summer payroll account. I'd like to have what those improper summer payroll accounts were and
Okay.
what the price of each one, cost of those were. It was also stated that in the 2024 budget, that the salaries were off by 5.47 million. Your previous finance director had stated in one of the meetings that I was at that it was $5.97 million. So I would need to know what happened to that $500,000.
Sure, we've recently completed the audit, I believe, on our end. We can share that documentation with you. I'd prefer to rely on the experts with the audit on what those findings were for salary items.
Okay. Also, it said many new positions are grant funded. I'd like to know how many of those positions are grant funded and what those related costs are.
Definitely.
In your line item, this is in 2025, line item 58902, you're showing a bad debt of, it may have been in 2024, but a bad debt of $299,195.82. And there's been nothing since 2019 up to this particular number. What is that bad debt?
I believe that's a lunch debt, school lunch debt from all the schools pulled together, carried over time.
Over how much time?
Mr. Tester.
You can get back to me on it.
Yeah, several years.
So
It was on the books and we removed it from the books. It didn't belong on the books.
that just triggers another question as
Sure.
to sitting here on a $299,000 bad debt for school lunches when one of your deficit I'm generalizing when I'm saying you are. I don't mean
Yeah, you're
yours
talking about
personally.
last year though, not this year, right?
Mhm.
24?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
So you were looking to cut, I believe the number was 25,000 out of the lunch program.
Yes. That was one of the proposals back in January, I believe.
Yes. On budget code, and this is in 2025, budget code 57202, you have $1,021,200 for building improvements. And what you're showing spent was $692,746. So what happened with the balance of $328,454?
I'd have to look at the account and look at the transfers in,
Okay.
transfers out.
You can get back to
give
me.
you the correct answer on that.
When I look at the budget for
I believe
2024.
that was for renovations for John Green, to make sure it was up to code, to make sure it was addressed fire code, and I believe a fire code related to windows as well as fire alarm system. and appropriate bathrooms for the age group of students that are in that building at this time.
Okay, no, it's fine.
88 requirements.
Someone can get back to me
Sure.
with, the exact items and the numbers, that's fine. In the 2025 budget, 191,703,723. As of, I think it was May 2nd, you had spent 145,446,000. There's, how, and this might have been part of Councilman Muto's question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. So how do you spend another 46,257,000 in the rest of this fiscal year?
We have some obligations that are due at the end of the year. We have summer pays. We have other commitments that have to be paid at a certain time. It's all timing on when we have to pay. And you have to look at that document you're looking at. What's the date on it? What, May?
May 2nd.
May 2nd. So you're probably looking at expenditures through April, right? So then we have May, June.
May and June.
June, and then whatever's carried over into July for summer pays.
So are you saying that there's encumbrances in addition to additional purchases over the next 2 months?
I would have to look at the list of encumbrances that are outstanding, look at a list of encumbrances that have to be closed. I would have to look at outstanding purchase orders that are on the books. It's difficult to answer that without all the information in front of me, but
Sure, fair
as you
enough.
know, you have all those issues to look into, with their open POs, purchase orders, encumbrances, things of the nature.
Okay. And I'm just going to, I'll send you a list of these questions too, and I'm just going to run through them quickly. What I'm looking for is what is the capacity, the body capacity of each of the schools that are in operation now? What is the percentage of occupancy for those buildings now as compared to what they are rated for? And this is something, if someone does have this number now, what is your FICA contribution rate? What is that
I will
percentage?
defer to our new executive director of finances. What? $6.2 and 1.45, and the mandated rates.
I'm sorry, Super, it's 6.2 and what?
6 point. $7.65 combined.
A total of 7.65.
Yes, percent.
What's the difference between the two numbers?
What's that?
I say, why is one 6.2 and one's 1.45?
I can defer to one of our CPAs in the crowd. FICA, Social Security, Medicare.
FICA, Social Security, and
Employer
Medicare.
portion of the tax, yes.
So it's a total. So I would need to have the numbers, and in order to calculate this, I would need to have the numbers of each of those three categories, right, to apply the applicable rates to it.
Yes,
Okay. So if I could get that as well.
sure.
Has there been any discussion with the capacity of these schools? And as I look back on the fact that we've closed X amount of schools over the past several years, 6, 7 years, from what I see on the roster, it appears as though the reduction of teachers has been 13 versus the amount of schools that have closed in the past 7 years. You're shaking your head. No, I'm just asking the question. You come to the mic, please.
Thank you, Councilman. I think in the information that I had provided to Councilman Muto from 19 on, we didn't close any schools then.
You what, please?
We didn't close schools from 18 on.
From 2018 on, you
18
haven't
on,
closed
yeah.
any.
So
Well, Okay, so
Prior to
whenever,
the, I think I have some numbers from,
go back 15 years ago, I'm not talking about Councilman Muto's information, I'm talking about my information.
yeah, I've got, hold on, I have something that I think that addresses some of
That's
that.
okay, that's okay. Mr. Testa, you can get to me on that, okay? Some of these other questions I can ask during the budget hearings, but my position, my feeling, and this is both for the school department and the city side, the city council doesn't negotiate contracts. So those of you who negotiate the contract have to live with the results of that. I don't see any solution, any long-term solution to this problem that we face, both on the school side and the city side. I don't see any long-term solution until both sides decide to tackle and resolve the issue of what's really driving the expenses of this city and the taxes, and that is salaries, pensions, and benefits. That's what's driving it. My other questions I can certainly hold until the budget hearings. Thank you.
Councilman Muto.
Just one question and then a comment. With grant positions, considering what's going on in the federal area right now, we count on grant funding. What happens to those positions when the grants go away? And then come back, then go away, then come back. So
Sure. If we put a position out there, it's subject to grant funding, the position's subject to grant funding. Typically posted subject to grant funding. So when the grant funds dry up, the positions are gone.
okay. All right. Awesome. And then I'd just like to conclude my comments that I want to thank you guys. I want to and ladies, that all the work that you've done with us since January has been very appreciative. I know we've had some really knockdown, drag down conversations. I know we've had some explicit language.
It's passion.
It's passion.
Councilman
Yes.
Muto.
Yes. I've used many language myself when I hit my thumb with the hammer. But I do truly want to express my appreciation that, like you said, we're one city. We're trying to figure this out. Mistakes were made in the past. I think you guys have addressed many of those. There's still work to be done. These are problems and issues that have been created over decades. We're not going to figure this out and fix it in 1 year. That's why we have a 5-year plan. And I just, again, wanted to express thank you for coming here, answering the questions. To be honest, I do like, this side of the table asking the questions, but you guys have done a very good job. You've answered our questions and you're making very good progress. We still have a long road ahead of us.
Sure.
But I think everyone's goal is to have a stronger city. Like you said, the Warwick Pride, and Warwick Pride has to do with not just what we offer as a city, but as the education component. And my hope and goal is that we continue improving with our outcomes, and we build an education system that rivals anybody else in the state. So I want to thank you again for all your help and assistance. And I will apologize for the use of some of my language in some of the meetings. But like you said, it is passion, but we are trying to figure out a very difficult, very dramatic situation. And again, I just want to appreciate and thank you for your help.
So we're about to run out the clock, unfortunately. So just a quick blurb for any members of the council who either stated questions tonight and weren't able to get answers just due to the time factor. Please make sure to email them to either Joanne or myself so we can make sure the school committee has provided those and the school department has provided those. Members of the public who may have came here with the hopes that they could ask questions, I recommend the same. Please send your questions or comments directly to the school department. If you'd rather send them to me and have me forward them, that's fine. I don't mind. I know there's at least one member of the public who already emailed. However, they also CC'd the school department, so that's addressed. Thanks you again to the school department. I'd have a much longer blurb about the last few years and whatnot, but I'll save that for the budget meetings because we are out of time and 10 seconds away from being in trouble in that regard. So thank you all again. Your time is much appreciated, especially on short notice. Motion made to adjourn and seconded. All in favor? All opposed? All right. City Council stands adjourned at 7 p.m.
Hope it went well.